We're going to be talking about some of the most important things today. We're going to be talking about why values and integrity matters. And today we have with us Stephan Thieringer. He's one of my favorite speakers and coaches. He is a serial entrepreneur, a business thinker, executive coach, and investor. And he has been recognized by the World Human Resource Conference and the World Coaching Congress as a world's top 101 top coaching leaders and received various other global and national accolades over the years. And if you have been to a Boston Speaks event before, Stephan has made many appearances. Isn't that right, Stephan? You made many appearances over here.
Thanks to you, my friend. Yes, I have. Great to be here. Kid, thanks for having me once again.
All right, Stephan. So we're talking about something very important today, right? Why values and integrity matter. And then you also use the word breaking your own heart as well.
Yeah.
So how did you get into talking about this topic or this area?
I think one of the things I always like to tell people, one of the things we don't see about each other is our brain, right? If our brain and the way we function, the way we think, if it's healthy or unhealthy. And the underlying part is our experience, our past, the remembered identities we have based on trauma, experiences, expertise. And for me, it was simply some of the experiences that I've created and essentially buried myself with over the course of time. And the other part, I think you mentioned breaking my own heart. The other part I think we all need to acknowledge today, and we know so much about in health and health history, in neurosciences, that whatever we do in our bodies in terms of translating into action, and we like to talk about authenticity probably at some point in the context of integrity and breaking my own heart and other pieces as well today, is that our body has chemical reactions and that accumulates over a period of time. So for me, integrity, living two truths, having perfect integrity as I was putting it out there in professional life versus having not so perfect integrity on the side of my personal life, aligning those two was a big part of that. So that reason and recognizing the importance of that brought me ultimately even closer and with a greater focus to talk about integrity and value alignment of your own personal values and how then inspiration and really leadership in terms of servant leadership as an example can happen.
Oh man, and that's great. So what if I'm going to play devil's advocate probably for the whole interview today? So what if people are listening to this and they're saying, "Oh, I just want to take action, take action, take action." I mean, do we have to dig down and talk about like integrity and value and journal and stuff?
Yeah, I think, journaling, I think, is a fantastic way of self-reflection and an assessment of a moment. And I think it's one of the things you said, I want to take action, I want to take action, or I want to take action. We are living in a society where taking action is sexy. At the expense of that, we're taking actions on something where we don't even know what direction we're going in. But it's like, okay, great, you're taking action. And that's being complimented for the sake of being busy, for the sake of being busy. And I think that's a disservice. We are living in a society today, and we have to acknowledge that, where immediacy, immediate feedback, and that immediacy of a reaction or an action is what we all crave. But let's go back to what I said earlier, right? How our body reacts. I mean, we're all addicts of text messages. If I send you a text message and I don't get something immediately back, well, I take it personal. I feel I'm being let down. I'm not seen. I'm not acknowledged. And the moment that text message comes back, my body kind of releases chemicals, dopamine. It's a dopamine rush. Frankly, the same rush you get from a drug. So that is something where I think, constantly, to your question, well, I need to take action. I need to take action. People, excuse my phrasing here, get off on the fact that they take action and something happens. Is what they're impacting really the impact they want, or is it well thought out? That's a completely different question.
So when we talk about values and integrity, where should we start?
I think it's a big part of self-assessment. Values is not something that your values and my values may be fundamentally different. I think it's really, I like to talk about, let's talk about global life assessment, right? How do I position myself and my life in the context of things like freedom, mindset, joy, lifestyle, the contributions I make to society, the contributions I make in an economic kind of a sense the connections I seek with people in the environment, my ecosystem, which is everything from my family, my parents, my grandparents, my daughter, my significant other, my partner, my boyfriend, my partner, my girlfriend, my wife, my friends. And we're so casual about saying, right? I think Facebook has educated us to be very casual about what we call a friend. I mean, there's friends and there's real friends. The energy I bring into a conversation, I think we underestimate, and we finally talk about it. Animals have understood that a long time. Once we were 6 to 8 feet of each other, chemistry starts happening. We start getting a vibe of each other, and we're allowing finally ourselves today to talk about it and say, what kind of energy did we bring into a room? Don't let people in a room put their energy on you. Why don't you bring the energy into a room? That can be a value. So I think that's where kind of these, top 5 values, as I always like to invite people to evaluate that along the lines of a global life assessment, so to speak. I think that makes great sense for people to start with. And then from there on, what happens next and how do we apply that in particular situations or contexts?
Got it. Can you go a little bit deeper into when you say global life assessment? What do you mean by that?
Just scale it. Say, how much freedom do you feel? I mean, go on a scale of 1 to 10 and ask yourself, how much joy do I have in life? It's a little bit like that wheel of life assessment, and I like to do it with a lot of from the audience here who doesn't know, I work with people in executive coaching in the context of supporting people in the way they get triggered by the environments and ecosystems that they move in. And I think that's a big part to then also self-assess and say, well, how much joy do I have in my life? How healthy is my contributions to society? How well do I feel that I'm connected to the environment that I'm in? Do I feel connected to my family? I learned this lesson. You and I both know the guy well, and who I speak about is Marshall Goldsmith. He starts used to start every single coaching engagement with the question of the executive, or to the executive, how would your kids talk about you, and how would your wife talk about you, or the partner? And generally the answer is, well, we all don't want to hear that question. We'd say, they'll compliment me, they'll think I'm amazing. And then he would go and actually do a 360-degree analysis and ask the wife and ask the kids. And most of the times what came back was completely different than what the guy thought or the girl thought that the opposing party, so to speak, would say about them. He's a jerk, or she's really too tough, or they're no fun in life, or they're not available enough. So whatever self-perception we have, there's oftentimes another perception out there. I learned that lesson, for that matter, when my daughter went to school. I will never, ever forget it. It was in grammar school in Woburn, Massachusetts, where she went to school the first years. And a teacher said to me, you need to realize something. The way your daughter is in school and the way your daughter is in the context of life at home is 2 different people. And I do believe that aligning those 2 pieces, as we sometimes learn to create different identities and different environments, is such an important piece, and consistency is such an important piece there as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is huge, right? As leaders and public speakers, the questions we should ask is, going back to, are we having joy in our lives? Are we living the way we want to be? Are we aligned with, other aspects of our lives? And this is interesting, And I'm going back into, public speaking. Let's say public speaking. You know how people are on stage and they have a whole different persona, maybe. It could be a different persona. It could be, but then when they go back onto a one-on-one, should that persona be the same? So, are you saying too? Maybe as a leader, as a speaker, wherever we are, should we have kind of the same persona, the same like one, as in okay, you see Stefan or you see Kit, or you see them the same, everywhere.
I think it's let's backtrack for a moment. I spoke earlier about authenticity, right? And I think authenticity is the way you get to experience me and the way I get to experience you. And it's about authenticity, which also then directly goes into consistency. And if we think about what authenticity really is taking your personal values, taking action, and that becomes authenticity on a consistent basis. Think of it like this, and I've said it to people before. If when we were younger, we were teenagers and we were asking our parents the first time for the car, well, the first time asking for the car meant probably the same answer, either no or yes from mom as well as from dad. There was no difference if we'd be asking on Friday night, on Saturday night, on Monday morning, or Tuesday evening. There was consistency there. And the expectation, and this is now the important piece when you go to, well, should we be different as a speaker, or if we're we're holding a leadership position in an organization? The important piece is, if I have clear expectation, I have clear anticipation also what the reaction from someone is, which is not just a reaction, it's a thought out action based on my grounding of a value system, which goes back to authenticity formula, which is values plus action equal authenticity. Well, at that moment, then I'm easily able to say, well, this is exactly what it is. And I have a clarity of expectation towards a senior leader, right? And that's, I think, where also when we talk about, there's a lot of politicians out there. We're very, very quick to say somebody is a great leader. And you've heard me say this a million times in forums that you've had me as a guest before. Great managers, great supervisors, but leaders, and the rarity of a leader is as many political statesmen we have today on this planet Earth. And there's a huge distinction of that, because when we talk about statesmen, I think we globally, we all have a particular expectation how that particular individual will behave in a particular situation. The same thing applies here: the consistency, the clarity, the discipline. And it goes back to a little bit, I always like to quote the book Start With Why, which is Simon Sinek's book, which made him famous, and the TED Talk back in 2011. The part being, there's discipline, there's clarity, and there's consistency. And that's an expectation I think we need to, most important, to give ourselves. And I think that's where, integrity and values starts. It's not about me projecting my values onto you. It's not about me saying you need to do this. It's about saying, hey, kid, when this happens, it makes me feel. And the makes me feel is grounded in that I have a value system, that I have boundaries, that I'm willing to communicate those boundaries, which also say, as long as I'm communicating boundaries alongside what grounds me with my value and my integrity, and integrity being one of those values, that means I'm telling you I want to continue staying engaged. I'm not blocking you out, but I'm saying to you, if we play ball with each other, whatever that may be, baseball, football, soccer, foosball, whatever it is, lacrosse, here's the rules. This is what we both agreed to, because I want to continue playing with you. But if you don't do that, I'm going to give you a red card and you get the hell out of my life. And that means personal as well as professional. And I understand, I have a lot of conversations with people over values, because in family systems itself, oftentimes there's a thing called family systems therapy, or internal family systems therapy, IFS, I believe it's called. And there's a lot of parts work and different parts of us, which is maybe a younger child that pops up in given moments that triggers us. We got to have a conversation with that younger child sometimes. We got to understand and explore what is the value system that younger child operates on, and really asking that younger child gently to step aside, because that's no longer working for us. That's an internal boundary we can set for ourselves as well, which again is a grounding in growth of our own value system. You got to stop me, because I can go on and on and on this one.
I got a bunch of questions. When we, our value systems, so we have a list of our values.
Yep.
Of course, so is there a right number for that?
No.
Or does it?
No, I think it's, I think whatever is most important to you. I mean, I think there's people who, I can't tell you this is the value you should have. That would be completely wrong of me. But there is probably some values where you will say, or I may say, what's really important to me is honesty. What's really important for me is, maybe it's punctuality. I mean, make the stereotype out of me for a moment. I'm German. As Germans, we're known that we like to be on time. So if I'm constantly 5 minutes, 10 minutes early, that is a value that is important to me. I have the option now. I have one of two options. I can say to you, hey, kid, you and I are collaborating on a particular project. What's really important to me is timeliness and punctuality. Can you and I agree on that? We're already, that we can start the meeting at 2:00. So let's be 5 or 10 minutes early. So by the time 2:00 comes, we can start. And you say, yeah, absolutely. So I've already now I've tested two of your values. Value one is, I'm testing your value of punctuality and timeliness. Value two, I'm asking really for is, Are you willing to stick with a commitment that you make in my face? Are you honest? Are you truthful? Make sense?
Hmm.
So if those two things are really important to me, you, with one strike, you can violate technically two things, or you can choose not to make those values a priority for you. So then I get the choice. And this is the important thing. We're two human beings. We're two universes, so to speak. I get then to choose, does this work for me or does it not? And if I'm very rigid about my values and that continues, bring tension into my life, maybe gives me anxiety, maybe gives me fear. So now we have to have a boundary conversation, which is, hey, kid, what's really important to me is that you are on time. Because when you're not on time, it makes me feel that you don't see me and you don't think that it is important to me that we start our meeting on time. Do you think you can work on that? And then you get to give me an answer. The second part I could add to that then is, hey, remember, kid, we had this conversation a couple of weeks back. It's really important to me that when you make a commitment to me, which 2 weeks ago you made, but in the meantime, we had 3 meetings, and every meeting you were 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes late. It just feels again that you don't see me, that you don't care about me. Now, let's take this into a corporate so this could be personal, that could be a corporate context. Let's talk about corporate context for a moment, because I think a lot of people completely underestimate the significance of those, not just a conversation, but also how important it is to acknowledge people in that way. Because we did last year with my company, Human Innovation Garage, we did a survey with 160 CEOs. And the number 1 and 2 reason why people leave companies is not because they don't get paid enough. It is job fit and it's boss fit. And boss fit has a lot to do with the fact of, am I seeing? Am I being seen? Am I mattering? Do people recognize that I matter to the success of the organization and to the company? And that's in the very, very nuclear way, as we just talked about. That's where these little things happen, because we're all at the core, like it or not, there's always that little child in there somewhere which goes, interesting. Am I being seen? Do I matter? I want to matter. I want to be seen. I want to be acknowledged. And for some people, that's more. For some people, that's less. But that's where, a lot of that core starts.
Do you have any tips on, okay, let's say we kind of know our values and maybe we, write them down once in a while. How can we live them better? The,
I think that's a hard question to say. How
yeah.
can I live them better? I will give you an example where the word, one of the themes we have today is integrity. And where the word integrity really comes together, and I am all committed. We should do this in one of your next events. It'll be fun to do it. But let me give you the thing about integrity. When you're in front of an audience and you ask people to take their mobile phones out, right? Everybody goes, I have a mobile phone. And then you say to them, hey, let's pull up your text messages. And everybody goes, and everybody pulls up their text messages. And then you say, no, I want you to hold it up into the air. And they go, let's hold it all up into the air. And I want to see a white screen just to make sure that everybody has their text messages open. And whichever theme they have on their phone. And then you say, hey, and now I want you to turn that over to your left neighbor and I want them to read out the text messages. And that usually is a gray moment in everybody's face. Because here's what's happening. A, they realize that whatever is on there may not be something that they want their neighbor to see. Depending on what room you're in, their partner, their wife, their significant other, their business partner, a colleague, somebody they're trying to make an impression on is sitting next to them. But also what's going to come out is if they really are, for that matter, as high on their integrity level as they want everybody else to believe it. Because if you get this jolt at that moment in your chest, and I'm telling you, 90%, 95% of people in a room like that get that jolt, they don't want to give their phone over. Because for some reason or another, there's all kinds of secrecy shit on their phones. And it is exactly that piece where integrity falls apart. And I used to be that guy. I can own that today. But 5 years later, I can give my phone, and it was a year ago where I had the real test because I was at Mass General. My daughter was sitting at my hospital bed, and I was about to be shipped off into a quadruple bypass. And I gave her my phone. I gave her my phone access. I gave her my passwords. I knew there were phone calls going to come in. I knew there were text messages going to come in. And she looked at me on Tuesday and she laughingly said, okay, buddy, you're off the phone until Saturday. So for 5 days, my daughter had my phone. She answered my text messages, my phone calls, whatever came in on my personal mobile number. And I had no hesitations. There was nothing on there that I was afraid that she was going to see, something she shouldn't see, or whatever else it is. That for me was the ultimate come around, that the work I had done with aligning my personal and my professional integrity had completely aligned. Which is why today I can have this conversation. Are there still conversations? See, one of the things which is interesting, and let me say this: people take integrity for sometimes the wrong word. People will say, let's take a conversation, and I have a perfect example. I hired a vendor, and that particular vendor sent me an invoice, and I said, you know what? I'm not prepared to pay the size of that invoice because that's not what was anticipated. And the response is that people like to throw each other in the face. The two big words people like to throw each other in the face is you have no integrity, or the other thing which became very popular through the last administration of the government in the United States is the word narcissism. People are very quick, and I've heard it in a couple of meetings, not towards me, but in a different context. Oh, that's narcissistic. First off, I would invite people to be always curious about when somebody is being called a narcissist. There's a reason why they are a narcissist. The only emotion you should feel at that moment for that individual, at the moment that it happens, is curiosity and empathy. Because there's a reason why they are who they are, and there's a reason why they're acting and choosing to act the way they are, because maybe they just can't help themselves. And I really mean it that way. So it will also protect you in this exchange of grounding yourself and building that boundary, and in not just saying, like kind of the way we drive. If I drive on the highway and somebody doesn't drive as fast as I think that I should be driving, I have two options. I can get all mad, for that matter, at myself, or I can ask myself, maybe that's my daughter when she was 17 years old in front of me and she's learning how to drive and she's afraid of switching over a lane. Changes the perspective, doesn't it? And these are the kinds of things I think they're so important. So going back to the vendor story, I was refusing to pay the bill to the extent, and the vendor says to me, you don't have integrity. I'm having the conversation, right, about the bill. So I'm having the conversation, the negotiation, the rebuttal, whatever it may be, to either find different payment terms or different amounts or whatever it may be. If I would have no integrity, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be not even calling you. I'd be blocking you out of my life and you'd be gone. That's the difference, how I think we need to really understand. Integrity can also be the willingness based on my truth, my honesty, my setting of boundaries, my willingness to engage with someone else. That becomes part of integrity as well. And I think that's another big part of that.
Stefan, how did you personally work on it for you? Like you went from, okay, hey, take my phone, nothing to hide, from, okay, maybe before. What did you have to do personally?
It's not so much what did I have to do personally. Let's ask the question. Let's put it differently. What happened in my life that ultimately got me there? It was that I repeated patterns in relationships. I repeated patterns in professional environments that then suddenly started bleeding over into my personal life and vice versa. And frankly, I had my ex-wife look at me and saying, I just don't want to deal with it anymore. And there's no pain load in this anymore, but that was kind of the ultimate in my face where you kind of go, wow, this just happened. And you kind of go, okay, I need to make some changes. And it really, and a lot of therapy, frankly. I mean, I'm very open to talk about it. There's a few books that I read, and mostly in the rooms of these people I've sat, and I say this with pride because I'm not a therapy junkie, but the point is you got to do some work, you got to put some time in, you got to hold yourself accountable, and you got to have some people around you who say to you, well, you know what, this is aligning with who you are creating in a new identity, so to speak, and this is what doesn't align. That's friends. Friends is the biggest group who says, and I have some amazing friends who say, listen, dude, what you're doing here, that's not really in line with what you told me that you wanted to do. And that was an ongoing process and still is an ongoing process. And I think that's what accountability, self-assessment, self-accountability is all about.
Wow. Well, if I were to ask you, What percentage do you feel that you are aligned today? What would you say?
100%.
Wow.
There
That's
is
good.
there is no opening. There is nothing there. And I can. I mean, here. You want me to read you my text messages? Uh, no, I sincerely can say that. Are there probably things where people disagree with on choices I make, or they
Hmm.
may not like what I do? I think that's the other part, right? We oftentimes make decisions which are ultimately a popularity contest, and we don't make certain decisions because we're afraid we're going to lose this popularity contest. It's kind of this whole like versus respect. Um, and I think that's an important consideration to give yourself. Are you making the decisions you need to make, or are you not making decisions because you're afraid people may not like you? But you know what? Life is not about liking. Life is about, again, how do you look yourself in the mirror the next morning and you say, you know what, this was for me, was the right choice. Kid may not like it, but we can work that out. We can have a conversation about that, and that space needs to be given certainly as well.
So after you got more aligned, or let's say 100%, how was life different for you?
Oh my God. Ha! I think it's no. I mean, I have no anxieties anymore. I used to have anxiety about, and this is going to sound dramatic, but this anxiety about will in one form or another something get discovered, that there is something on this side which I haven't talked about on that side. I'm very conscious about. Um, I mean, we all know these little fibbish things, right? Where we say, like, we tell half truth, and that's the little child in us, where we say, "Yeah, I did the homework, but we didn't do it entirely." So, but we say we did the homework, but did you do the entire homework? Well, we didn't really do the homework. So I'm very careful and very, very surgical about that piece as well. And that's, I think, again, a commitment to the way you communicate, a commitment the way you show up, a commitment the way you interact with people around you. And that, again, I think that's a big, big part of the energy people get from you, and also the results you get from your own environment in life, the people experiencing you, and the way you allow people to experience you, essentially, then as well.
Wow, Stefan, this has been powerful. Just hearing that you are saying 100%, I
Yep.
know myself and the audience is like, wow, probably
Yep.
a lot of people are like,
No, I mean, do this test. Take your phone. I sincerely mean it. If you're watching, if you're listening, if you're looking at the rerun later, take your phone, pull your text messages up, and put anybody in your mind next to you, and picture you're handing over your phone for a week, and they have access to everything on your phone, and they have access to, and not because you stored it away somewhere else the day before. No, right now it's a life event happening where you give up your phone. Are you comfortable with that? And that
yeah,
oftentimes is a good check in saying, you know what? Yeah, I'm there. Um, Again, having integrity doesn't mean that you live life perfectly. It doesn't mean, and this is, I think, the error a lot of people make. Having integrity simply means I own my own shit. I own my stuff. I make my choices based on a solid grounding. I'm willing to talk about it. I'm willing to not judge everybody around me just because they don't align to what I think is right. While at the same time, I'm consistent about it, and I can look myself tomorrow morning in the mirror and say, you know what? That face that looks back at me in the mirror, that's the only one I'm accountable for in that moment. That can look it back at me and say, you know what? That was clean choices. That was clarity, and it was lived along the values that are important for me.
mm, that's powerful. Yeah, you can take my phone any day. You'll just see a lot of cat pictures back and forth.
Yeah, it's like my dog who's sitting behind me. As you know, I'm now. My daughter makes fun of me. I'm now the guy with a dog Instagram, and it's hard to maintain.
Stefan, I want to say thank you for popping on and speaking with us. If people want to connect with you further, where's the best place to keep on connecting?
Wherever you get your social media fix, as I always like to say, I'm on Twitter, Stephan.Thieringer, on Instagram, on Twitter, Stephan T, or LinkedIn, certainly. And then the company website is humaninnovationgarage.com.
Awesome, Stefan. Any last words before we go for the day?
No, just be self reflective in the mirror. your values are your values, and set the boundaries around it. And I think values and integrity is a big part of self-care. And I think this day and age, after we just came through the COVID tunnel and we're at the exit, I think we need to all look at ourselves and exercise self-care. And I believe having good values, grounding values, boundaries around it, and integrity is part of that, I think is an important piece. So the invitation is really, find your foundational values and accordingly act with them. And that will create for you the integrity you're seeking.
Amazing. Stefan, I want to say thank you once again. And for our audience listeners, go connect with Stefan on social media and on his website. Everyone have